Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring India's defense modernization, and
Excellent.
it's complex
Yeah.
and honestly pretty fascinating.
Right.
I feel like we're seeing headlines about it all the time, but
Yeah.
I think this deep dive will help us kind of unpack the nuances and figure out what's really going on.
Well, and what's really interesting here is that, we're not just talking about India, like, bolstering its military, right?
Yeah.
We're potentially seeing, like, the rise of a new superpower,
Right.
which has major implications for, like, the existing world order.
Yeah. So let's set the stage here.
All right.
India is aiming for self-reliance, meaning they want to reduce their dependence on other countries for weapons and technology.
Mm-hmm.
They're investing heavily in like homegrown production.
Yeah.
And get this, they're even exporting their own defense systems now.
Wow.
But one thing I found really interesting was that despite this goal of self-reliance, India is actually the world's fourth largest defense spender.
That's right. And that might seem kind of contradictory, right?
Yeah.
But it actually highlights the scale of their ambition.
Okay.
They're investing in both domestic development and also acquiring select technologies from abroad.
Uh-huh.
So essentially hedging their bets while they build up their own capabilities.
So they're not just playing catch-up anymore.
Right.
They're making strategic moves to become a major player in this global arms market.
Exactly. And the editorial highlights some really specific examples of this.
Okay.
Like, take the BrahMos missile, for instance.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. That's the supersonic cruise missile developed jointly with Russia.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's become like a flagship product for India's defense industry and like a symbol of their technological progress.
Mm-hmm.
What's remarkable is that they've gone from being a major importer of arms to actually exporting advanced weaponry like this to other countries.
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive turnaround.
It is.
But it's not just about missiles, is it? The editorial also mentioned the INS Vikrant.
Ah, yes. The INS Vikrant. This is India's first indigenously built aircraft carrier,
Wow.
which is a significant milestone
Okay.
that showcases their growing shipbuilding capabilities and their commitment to projecting power, across the Indian Ocean.
Hold on, they built an aircraft carrier. That's not just slapping some parts together. That's a massive undertaking.
Absolutely. It signifies a level of technological sophistication that puts them in a very select group of nations.
Wow, that's a serious statement. And it sounds like they're not stopping there.
Nope.
The editorial mentioned these defense corridors.
Yes. These are special economic zones dedicated entirely to defense manufacturing. Attracting investment and fostering collaboration between private companies and research institutions.
So, like,
They're essentially creating entire regions
wow.
focused on building cutting-edge weapons systems.
So they're not just building impressive weapons, they're building an entire ecosystem to support their defense ambitions. That's a pretty bold move.
It is.
What I'm curious about is why is India making this push now? Like, what's driving this sudden urgency to modernize their defense capabilities?
Well, there are several factors at play here.
Okay.
First, you have the geopolitical context.
Yeah.
India shares borders with some powerful and at times unpredictable neighbors.
You're talking about China and Pakistan, right?
Exactly. The threat of conflict is always looming, and India needs to be prepared to defend its interests.
So it's about making sure they have the military muscle to deter any potential aggression.
Right.
That makes sense, but it can't just be about reacting to threats, right? They must have their own ambitions as well.
You're absolutely right. India is also looking to secure its position as a major power in the region and on the global stage.
Okay.
A strong military is seen as essential to achieving that goal.
So it's a mix of defense and ambition,
Yeah,
protecting their interests while also asserting their influence in the world?
precisely. And this is where the economic aspect comes into play. India's defense modernization isn't just about security. It's also about boosting their economy and becoming a global leader in technology.
So it's not just about building tanks and missiles.
Right.
It's about creating jobs, attracting investment, and fostering innovation across a wide range of industries.
Exactly. It's a multifaceted strategy with far-reaching implications both domestically and internationally.
Okay, so we've talked about the motivations and the achievements, but let's get real for a second.
Yeah.
No transformation of this scale is without its hurdles.
For sure.
What are some of the challenges that India faces in this quest for self-reliance?
One of the biggest challenges is the continued reliance on certain imported technologies.
Okay.
While they've made great strides in domestic production, they still depend on other countries for things like advanced engines for their fighter jets or sophisticated sensors for their missile systems.
So even with their Make in India initiative, they're still stuck relying on foreign suppliers for certain key components.
Yeah.
That seems like a vulnerability, doesn't it?
It does, and it highlights the fact that true self-reliance is a complex and long-term goal.
Right.
It's not something that can be achieved overnight.
And what about the actual process of getting these new weapon systems up and running?
Yeah.
I've heard stories about bureaucratic nightmares in India's defense procurement process. Is that still a major issue?
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh,
The procurement process can be incredibly slow and cumbersome
really?
due to layers of bureaucracy and complex regulations.
Wow.
It's a major headache for both the Indian military and for foreign companies looking to sell their products to India.
So even if they have the money and the desire to acquire this new technology,
Right.
they're often bogged down by red tape and delays.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a serious obstacle to their modernization goals.
It is, and it's something that needs to be addressed if India wants to keep pace with this rapidly evolving world of defense technology.
Okay, so we got reliance on foreign imports and bureaucratic bottlenecks.
Hmm.
Anything else?
Well, building advanced weapons systems requires a highly skilled workforce.
Yeah.
And India is still facing a shortage of engineers, scientists, and technicians with the specialized expertise needed to design, build, and maintain these complex systems.
So it's not just about the hardware, it's about having the brain power to back it up.
Exactly. India is working to address this skills gap through various education and training programs, but it's an ongoing challenge.
So even with all these challenges, India seems determined to forge ahead with their defense modernization plans.
Yes.
But what does it all mean? Why should we as individuals care about what's happening halfway across the world?
That's a great question. And the answer lies in the fact that India's rise as a military power has implications far beyond their borders.
Okay.
It's about the shifting balance of power in Asia and the potential for increased competition and even conflict in the region.
So it's not just about India's security, it's about the stability of the entire region
Wow.
and potentially the world.
Exactly. And as India becomes more self-reliant in defense, it also changes the dynamics of the global arms trade.
Okay.
They're becoming a significant exporter, which could have a ripple effect on other countries.
So this isn't just about India bolstering its military, it's about a potential shift in the global power balance, with India playing a more prominent role.
Precisely. And that's why it's important to understand the complexities of this transformation and what it means for the future.
This is already way more interesting than I thought it would be, but I think we need to dig a little deeper into some of these issues.
I agree. There's a lot more to unpack here.
Yeah, we'll be back to explore those challenges in more detail and discuss some of the potential solutions that India is considering.
Sounds good.
Stay with us.
Okay.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about how India's quest for self-reliance is about more than just their own security.
Right.
It actually has the potential to, reshape the global power balance.
It really does. And to understand the scope of this transformation, I think it's worth taking a closer look at some of the specific advancements India is making.
Okay.
The Drishti IAS editorial highlighted a couple of examples that I found particularly intriguing.
I'm all ears. What caught your attention?
Well, India's development of the Prelay tactical ballistic missile, for one.
Okay.
This is a short-range missile designed for battlefield flexibility, able to strike targets with pinpoint accuracy.
Uh-huh.
It gives them a significant advantage in potential conflicts with neighboring countries.
I see. So it's not just about having a big arsenal.
Right.
It's about having weapons that are tailored to the specific challenges they face.
Exactly. They're thinking strategically about the types of conflicts they might be involved in and developing the right tools for the job.
Okay.
And then there's the Agni Prime missile.
I vaguely remember hearing about that one. What's the significance of that particular missile?
The Agni Prime is an intermediate-range ballistic missile with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. It's a key component of India's nuclear deterrent and a clear signal to the world that they have the capability to strike targets far beyond their immediate neighborhood.
Okay, that definitely gets your attention. But building these advanced weapons systems requires more than just technical know-how, right? What about the infrastructure to support all this?
You're absolutely right. That's where those defense industrial corridors we mentioned earlier come into play.
Right, the special economic zones dedicated to defense manufacturing.
Exactly.
Can you tell us a bit more about how they're actually working in practice?
Well, take the corridor in Tamil Nadu, for example.
Okay.
It's already attracting billions of dollars in investment,
Wow.
with major defense companies like Larson and Toubro setting up shop there.
Okay.
They're building state-of-the-art facilities, not just for manufacturing, but for research and development as well.
So it's not just about assembling parts. They're actually creating a hub for innovation in defense technology.
Precisely. They're bringing together the brightest minds from the private sector, academia, and government research institutions to create a collaborative environment where new ideas can flourish.
So it's like a Silicon Valley for defense,
Yeah,
a place where cutting-edge technology is being developed at a rapid pace.
that's a good analogy. And remember, there's another corridor in Uttar Pradesh.
Right.
Both are strategically located to take advantage of existing industrial infrastructure and skilled labor pools.
Smart. It sounds like they've really thought this through.
These-
But I'm curious, are these corridors solely focused on land-based systems, or are they looking at other domains as well?
No, their ambitions extend far beyond that. They're making significant investments in maritime security as well.
Maritime security, is that just a fancy way of saying they're building a bigger navy?
It's more than just that. Maritime security is about protecting shipping lanes, safeguarding resources, and projecting power in the vast expanse of the ocean.
Right, and that's where the Ines Vikrant comes in.
Yeah.
It's not just a symbol of national pride. It's a strategic asset that allows them to assert their presence in the Indian Ocean.
Exactly. An aircraft carrier gives India the ability to project power far beyond its shores, which is crucial in a region with increasingly contested maritime claims.
So they're not just building a bigger navy, they're building a more capable and assertive one.
Precisely. And they're also investing in advanced submarines, destroyers, and patrol vessels to further enhance their maritime capabilities.
Uh-huh.
It's a comprehensive approach to securing their interests in a region where sea power is becoming increasingly important.
It definitely sounds like they're covering all their bases.
Yeah.
But as we discussed earlier, this ambitious modernization drive isn't without its challenges.
That's right. There are some significant hurdles they need to overcome if they want to truly achieve their goal of self-reliance.
Okay, let's dive into those challenges.
Okay.
What are the main roadblocks they're facing?
Well, the biggest one, as we mentioned before, is their continued dependence on foreign suppliers for certain key technologies.
Yeah.
Even though domestic production is increasing, they still rely on imports for things like advanced engines, sensors, and some types of weaponry.
So even though they're building aircraft carriers and sophisticated missiles, they're still having to go shopping overseas for some of the core components.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty big vulnerability.
It is, and it underscores the fact that true self-reliance in defense is a complex and long-term goal.
Yeah.
It's not just about building things, it's about mastering the underlying technologies.
So in a way, they're still playing catch-up in certain areas of technological development.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
They've made remarkable progress in a relatively short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a gap between their aspirations and their current capabilities in certain critical areas.
And what about that bureaucratic maze we talked about earlier? Is that still a major obstacle to their modernization efforts?
Yes, the procurement process can be incredibly slow and cumbersome, hampered by layers of bureaucracy and complex regulations.
So even if they identify a piece of equipment they need or a technology they want to acquire, it can take years, even decades, to actually get it into the hands of their military.
That's right. It's a source of frustration for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And it can hinder their ability to respond effectively to emerging threats.
And what about the human element in all of this? You mentioned earlier that there's a shortage of skilled personnel in India's defense industry.
Yes, that's another major challenge. They need more engineers, scientists, and technicians with the specialized expertise needed to design, build, and maintain these increasingly complex systems.
So it's not just about having the blueprints and the raw materials. It's about having the people with the right skills to make it all work.
Exactly. And that requires investment in education and training, creating a pipeline of talent that can sustain their defense ambitions in the long run.
Okay, so we've laid out the challenges.
Yeah.
But what are some of the potential solutions? Is India doing anything to address these issues and overcome these hurdles?
Yes, they are. And some of the solutions being considered are quite innovative. For example, the Drishti IAS editorial highlights the need for a more streamlined and efficient procurement process.
That seems like a no-brainer. How are they proposing to fix that bureaucratic mess?
One suggestion is to revise and simplify the Defense Acquisition Procedure, known as DAP 2020.
Okay.
This complex set of regulations governs how India acquires weapons and equipment, and it's often seen as a major source of delays and frustration.
So it's like a giant rule book that's holding them back.
Yeah.
What are they doing to simplify it?
Well, there are a few ideas being floated around. One is to create a single window clearance system for acquisitions, which would eliminate a lot of the back and forth between different government departments.
So instead of going through multiple layers of approval, they'd have one central point of contact.
Right.
That sounds way more efficient.
Exactly. Another proposal is to give more autonomy to the individual branches of the military to make procurement decisions, allowing them to move more quickly to acquire the equipment they need.
So less bureaucracy, more flexibility. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
But what about the funding for all of this? Modernizing a military is an expensive undertaking.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to another key point highlighted in the editorial: the need to allocate a higher percentage of the defense budget to modernization.
So it's not just about having a big defense budget, it's about how you spend it.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing investment in cutting-edge platforms like the LCA Tejas Mark II, India's domestically developed light combat aircraft,
Okay.
and the S-400 air defense system acquired from Russia.
Those sound pretty high-tech. Can you give us a quick rundown of what makes those systems so significant?
Sure. The Tejas Mark II represents a major leap forward for India's domestic fighter jet program. It incorporates advanced technologies and is designed to compete with some of the world's leading aircraft. As for the S-400, it's one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world, capable of tracking and engaging multiple targets simultaneously, including aircraft missiles and even some types of ballistic missiles.
Okay, I see why those would be high on their shopping list. But what about reducing their reliance on foreign imports? Is there anything they can do to become more self-sufficient in producing those key technologies?
Yes, there are a few strategies in play here, remember? Those Make in India and production-linked incentive schemes we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Combining these could be a game changer.
Okay, refresh my memory. What are those all about again?
Sure. Make in India is a government initiative aimed at encouraging domestic manufacturing and boosting economic growth.
Right.
It's about attracting investment, creating jobs, and turning India into a global manufacturing hub.
Right. And the PLI scheme, if I recall correctly, offers financial incentives to companies that produce goods within India. So
Exactly.
they're essentially making it more profitable to manufacture things locally.
Exactly. And the editorial suggests that the government should use these schemes to specifically target critical technologies like engines, avionics, and sensors, incentivizing companies to set up production facilities within India.
So instead of importing those crucial components, they'd be making them right there at home. That would be a huge step towards self-reliance.
It would indeed, but achieving technological independence isn't just about going it alone. Strategic partnerships with other countries can also play a vital role.
So teaming up with other nations to share knowledge and technology.
Right.
What kind of partnerships are we talking about here?
India is already collaborating with countries like the U.S., France, Israel, and Russia on joint development projects.
So they're not afraid to work with a diverse group of partners, even those who might have differing geopolitical interests.
Exactly. They're pragmatic about their approach, recognizing that collaboration is essential for acquiring advanced technologies and boosting their own research and development capabilities. Initiatives like the India-USX program, which focuses on fostering collaboration between Indian and American startups in the defense and aerospace sectors, are a prime example of this approach.
And what about that whole cybersecurity and space defense thing we touched on earlier? Is India doing anything to prepare for those emerging threats?
Yes, they are. The editorial highlights the need for India to develop dedicated cyber defense and space command units, recognizing that these domains are becoming increasingly important in modern warfare.
So it's not just about having boots on the ground or planes in the air anymore.
Right.
They need to be prepared to defend themselves in cyberspace and even outer space.
Precisely. And they're already taking steps in this direction with initiatives like the Defense Space Agency, which was established in 2019 to oversee India's space-based military capabilities. They're also investing in developing anti-satellite weapons and other technologies designed to deter threats in space.
So they're taking a holistic approach, recognizing that modern warfare is no longer confined to traditional battlefields.
Exactly. And the editorial makes the point that investing in these areas is not just about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about protecting critical infrastructure, safeguarding their economy, and ensuring national security in the 21st century.
So cybersecurity and space defense are no longer niche concerns for military planners.
Right.
They're essential components of any modern defense strategy.
Absolutely. And the editorial suggests that India needs to take a more proactive approach to these challenges. investing in research and development, building up their capabilities, and working with international partners to address shared threats.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from India's impressive achievements to the persistent challenges they
We
face.
have.
But I'm still curious about one thing. What does all of this mean for the average Indian citizen?
Yeah,
How does their country's defense modernization impact their daily lives?
that's an excellent question, and it's one that often gets overlooked in discussions about defense policy.
Yeah.
The reality is that a country's defense posture has a ripple effect on various aspects of society.
So it's not just about protecting the borders, it's about creating a stronger, more prosperous society as a whole.
Precisely. For example, investment in defense research and development often leads to spin-offs in other sectors like telecommunications, materials, science, and even healthcare.
So that new super strong lightweight material developed for a fighter jet could end up being used in, say, a more fuel-efficient car or even a life-saving medical device.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless when you consider the potential for technology transfer between the defense sector and other industries.
That's pretty cool. It's like a hidden benefit of investing in defense. It can actually drive innovation and progress across the board.
Indeed. And let's not forget the economic impact a robust defense industry creates jobs, stimulates local economies, and contributes to overall national growth.
So it's not just about building weapons, it's about building a stronger economy and a more prosperous future for India's citizens.
Precisely, and that's why understanding the complexities of defense modernization is so crucial. It's about recognizing that it's not just a military matter, it has far-reaching implications for society as a whole.
This deep dive has certainly opened my eyes to the multifaceted nature of defense modernization.
Yeah,
It's so much more than just tanks and missiles.
right.
It's about innovation, economic growth, and even societal progress.
It is.
But I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface here.
I agree, there's still much more to explore.
Well, we'll be back after a short break to delve into some potential solutions to the challenges India faces and discuss the broader implications of their defense modernization journey. Don't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how India's defense modernization isn't just about military hardware. It's about, economic growth and societal progress, too.
Yeah, it really is.
But we also touched on some of those challenges they're facing. I'm really curious to hear more about those potential solutions.
Okay.
What can India do to really overcome these hurdles and solidify its position as, a major player in that global defense arena?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And the good news is this Drishti IAS editorial we've been looking at offers some really intriguing answers.
Okay, let's start with that procurement headache we keep talking about.
Yeah.
It sounds like that bureaucratic maze is a major roadblock. Is there any way to streamline that process, make it a little easier?
There are definitely ways to make it more efficient.
Okay.
The editorial suggests a couple of key changes.
Okay.
One is revising and simplifying the Defense Acquisition Procedure, or DIP 2020.
Okay, for those of us who aren't defense policy wonks, what exactly is DAP 2020 and why is it such a big deal?
Think of it like a giant rule book
Okay.
that governs how India buys weapons and equipment.
Okay.
It's meant to ensure transparency and accountability,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also become incredibly complex and time-consuming.
So it's well-intentioned, but it's also creating a lot of red tape and delays.
Exactly.
What are some of the proposed solutions?
Well, one idea is to create a single window clearance system for acquisitions.
Okay.
Right now, there are multiple layers of approval required,
Yeah.
which slows everything down.
Oh.
A single window system would streamline the process and make it much more efficient.
So less bureaucracy, more action.
Exactly.
I like it. What else?
Another suggestion is to give the individual branches of the military, so the Army, Navy, and Air Force, more autonomy in making those procurement decisions.
So basically cutting out some of the middlemen and giving the people who actually need the equipment more say in the process.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that each branch has unique needs and allowing them to be more agile and responsive.
Yeah, I can see how that would speed things up.
Right.
But even with streamlined procedures, you still need the money to actually buy all this stuff.
Right.
Modernizing a military is an expensive undertaking.
Absolutely. And that's why the editorial also emphasizes the need to allocate a higher percentage of the defense budget specifically to modernization.
So it's not just about having a big defense budget overall.
Right.
It's about making sure that enough of that money is going towards actually, upgrading weapons systems and acquiring new technologies.
Precisely. It's about prioritizing those investments to ensure that India's military can keep pace with the evolving threats they face.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about that reliance on foreign imports? We've talked about how that can be a strategic vulnerability.
Yeah.
Is there anything India can do to become more self-sufficient in actually producing those key technologies themselves?
There are a few strategies they're pursuing. We
Mm.
already talked about the Make in India and production-linked incentive schemes.
Right.
Combining those could be a game changer when it comes to boosting domestic production of critical defense technologies.
Okay, let's revisit those for a second. Remind me how those schemes work together.
So Make in India is all about promoting domestic manufacturing across a wide range of industries,
Right.
while the PLI scheme offers financial incentives specifically to companies that choose to manufacture their products within India.
So it's a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Create a favorable environment for manufacturing and then sweeten the deal with some financial incentives.
Exactly. And the editorial suggests that the government should use these schemes strategically to target specific technologies that are essential for self-reliance. Things like engines, avionics, sensors,
Hmm.
incentivizing companies to actually set up those production facilities within India.
So instead of importing those crucial components, they'd be making them right there in India.
Yeah.
That would be a huge shift.
It would. And it would create jobs, boost the economy, and reduce their dependence on other countries.
It sounds like a win-win situation, but is going it alone really the best strategy? Wouldn't it make more sense to collaborate with other countries, especially those who have already mastered these technologies?
Yeah, that's a good point. And the editorial actually acknowledges that strategic partnerships will be crucial for India to achieve its defense modernization goals.
So it's not about isolationism, it's about finding that right balance between self-reliance and collaboration.
Precisely. And India is already pursuing this strategies.
Wow.
They have joint development projects with countries like the US, France, Israel, and Russia.
So they're not picking sides or limiting themselves to one particular partner. They're working with a diverse group of countries, even those who might have, competing interests.
That's right. They're being pragmatic about their approach,
Yeah.
recognizing that collaboration is essential for accessing cutting-edge technologies and accelerating their own learning curve.
Makes sense. If you can learn from the best, why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
But there's one more piece of this puzzle we need to talk about, cybersecurity and space defense.
Right.
These are relatively new areas of focus for most militaries.
Yeah.
Is India doing anything to prepare for these emerging threats?
They are. And the Drishti IAS editorial highlights the need to take these challenges seriously.
Okay.
It specifically mentions the need for dedicated cyber defense and space command units.
So recognizing that cyberspace and outer space are becoming new battlefields in the 21st century?
Exactly, and they're already taking steps in this direction.
Okay.
The Defense Space Agency, established in 2019, is responsible for developing India's space-based military capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
They're investing in anti-satellite weapons and other technologies designed to deter aggression in space.
So they're not just talking about it, they're actually taking concrete steps to prepare for these new types of conflict.
They are, and the editorial emphasizes the importance of a proactive approach. It's not enough to react to threats after they've emerged.
Right.
They need to be anticipating future challenges and investing in the capabilities needed to address them.
That makes sense. It's like they're playing a game of chess thinking several moves ahead to anticipate their opponent's actions.
That's a great analogy, and it really highlights that strategic thinking that's driving India's defense modernization efforts.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
From the challenges to the potential solutions. And what I find most fascinating is that this isn't just about India building a stronger military. It's about, their ambition to really become a major player on that global stage.
It really is. Their defense modernization is a reflection of their broader aspirations: economic growth, technological advancement, and a more assertive foreign policy.
It's a fascinating story to follow, and I have a feeling this is just the beginning.
I think you're right. India is a rising power, and their actions will have ripple effects throughout the region and the world.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about. And to you, our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey.